Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on The Pursuit. We're so thankful that you would join with us. And I want to remind you, it is our goal, it's our mission, it is really our purpose and privilege to be able to just give you something as a follower of Jesus Christ, really as a disciple of Christ, looking to pursue greater intimacy with God and ultimately discovering your purpose, your giftings, and then actualizing them for the greater benefit of the kingdom and really people around you everywhere you go. And so, thank you for joining us. Remember, hit the like button, subscribe, share this. But today you are going to be blessed. We're excited. We have Dr. Ken Gurley with us, and we're just going to talk about a number of things. We're going to see where this goes. But this is a man who truly has been highly impactful in my life. We know he's been impactful in many ways. He's served in really what we would call upper level executive management leadership roles within a ministerial fellowship that I'm privileged to be a part of. That is the United Pentecostal Church International. Pastored a thriving, cutting edge church in Pearland, Texas. But there's more to him than what most of you may know. And so today we're honored to have Dr. Ken Gurley.
Thank you.
And we're just privileged to have you. And today we're going to let you just share maybe a little bit what's on your heart, but certainly we want to know your testimony. And then talk to us after you share with us really how you came to know the Lord, so to speak, your growth process, and then some of the things that have become near and dear to help you in that continual pursuit of God in your own life. So anyway, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my privilege. And I'm thankful for you, for Parkway, the influence that you guys have had on all of us. This is a cutting edge church that has continued to just radiate and ripple outward. And we're seeing just the blessings of it everywhere. I was out of a church like that. I didn't start in a church that was known for radiating health. The pH level, the churches that I attended as a child were pretty low. A lot of
I believe
dysfunction.
that's caustic, right?
It's caustic. It is. And so growing up, one of four kids, we were all a year apart. My dad was a blue-collar worker, paper mill. My mom's an educator. And so we just went to church and in the Houston area, and we just successfully seemed to drift toward churches that were either entering into a deep valley of some sort. So as we grew up, we just saw a lot of things we shouldn't have seen, heard a lot of things we shouldn't have heard. As the kids started getting into their early teen years, my parents just made a decision they were going to drive 20 miles to get us into a healthy environment and healthy leadership. So James and Imogene Kilgore were the pastors there, and they welcomed us with open arms. Of course, Pastor Kilgore, the first service we were there, he said, it's so good to have all of the Gurley family here. I want the Gurley boys to stand up. Well, I never really forgave him for that. You know, he would remind me that till he died. He reminded me. It was one of his favorite lines that he ever did. But the Kilgores just took an interest in us, and there was something going on. We weren't used to this. There was something going on all the time. And there were some young men that lived nearby that had driver's license, had a vehicle, that would always circle by our house, pick up my brothers and sister, and bring us to church on the off nights and youth services, and just kept us involved. And later I found out it was Imogene Kilgore who would contact these guys and say, go get Ken. And they saw something in me that I didn't see, and it was just the power of leadership. So he got us involved, and we started getting involved. I started driving a bus When I was 15, I didn't have my driver's license,
I
and
love it.
he didn't really think too much about laws. And so I would drive down in Port Houston. I would go out with Sister Kilgore on Saturday morning. We would knock doors. And I had a big St. Bernard dog. I would put the dog on top of the bus, and he would just bark, and that would draw the kids. And we would talk to the kids, find out where their parents were, go knock, get permission slips. And then the next morning we would pick them up. So we were picking up 1,500, 2,000 kids every Sunday.
Oh, my.
And bringing them to
Wow.
church. And so I started teaching kids' church when I was 15. And then most of them spoke Spanish, but so we acted out a lot because of the language barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And we just saw some great things happen. I think 9 pastors that I picked up on bus route that are still
Wow.
part of the movement today. So when I turned 16, my pastor found out I was playing sports, and he loved sports, but he decided it was a hindrance for me. And so he called me in his office, made me quit. I had to go the next day and quit everything I was playing. I wasn't that good, but I enjoyed it, you know, and made me quit and promised he would get me more involved, and he did. And so Friday nights, we did street meetings. I preached my first 100 sermons standing on a concrete park bench in downtown Houston, the worst area of town. And you knew you were successful if they threw down their wine bottles. Or then on Saturdays, we did our bus route. Sunday, ran the bus route. Sunday afternoon, we went out to where they were, just smoking grass, doing psychedelic drugs. This was the Jesus Revolution era.
Right.
And Brother Kilgore taught me how to play a few chords on a guitar. And he would tell me, you sit down, play a few chords, they'll draw a crowd, and then play a little bit, then ask them if they want to get high. And if you want to get high, join me. And he said, always remember, keep playing, stand up, and they'll follow you to the bus. We'll
Pied
get them on the
Piper.
bus.
I
It was a
love
Pied
it.
Piper
I
evangelist.
love it.
And we'd bring them to church, and they'd come and sit. They didn't sit on chairs or pews. They sat in the altar cross-legged, most of them higher than a kite, and we won many of them to the Lord. And so he pushed that. He developed that in us, 150 pastors out of his ministry.
Wow.
And he just instilled in us the importance of reaching the lost, getting outside of the 4 walls, taking personal responsibility, and seeing things happen.
That is incredible. What a legacy to pass forward.
He was the real deal. And his wife, she was the consummate people person. And she would work us like crazy. But she would smile and clap and compliment, and it was pretty incredible.
That's so awesome. So let me ask you, I know that you have, I believe, an accounting background, right? So you were our CPA. Am I correct in that?
I am.
Okay. So when you graduated high school, then did you go into secular college right away? Is that what your path was? What did that look like?
There was a Bible college there in Houston at the time, and Brother Kilgore was over it for several years, but then he let go of it when he became assistant superintendent. I was thinking about going. My oldest brother did go. He pastors in Washington State. But after Brother Kilgore left, my mom just said, Ken, you got the grades, why don't you just pursue this? If you want to go back, do that. So Vietnam was still going when I entered high school. So we decided, a few of us at school, we started making application to the military academies, and I got accepted to 2 of them. And then Vietnam ended when the next year or two. So the military academies didn't look so
Appealing.
advantageous.
Yeah, right.
We were just figuring that was years of schooling that would delay our entrance into, and so I went to, my parents moved to Alaska when I was 17. They ran away from home and left me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Kilgore gave me an apartment there at the church, and I started going to University of Houston for a professional degree in accounting. And so I kept working, going to school, and lived there at the church. It's probably the only thing that kept me, because I was all alone, and it sort of kept me. I worked full-time, went to school full-time, stayed up and studied. But I also, this was when I drew closer to my pastor, because when I would get in at midnight, exhausted from the day, his car would be outside the prayer room. And I had a key to the prayer room, so I would just go in there and just sit and listen to him pray.
Mm.
And it was relaxing to me. And it was just, and he would see me there and he would pray with me. And that's how Brother Kilgore taught us. If you want to learn how to pray, find somebody that can pray and just sit and listen. And I did that day after day after day after day. And then he would see me there, we'd pray, and he knew I didn't have much money. And so we would go to an all-night coffee shop because he had a sweet tooth. He loved hot fudge sundaes, and he knew I wouldn't judge him. And so we would go, and he would just talk to me about my life. It was one of those occasions when I was trying to figure out what to do, that he just said, "Ken, I won't call you, but you need to realize there is a calling. You're going to have to find out what it is and when to do that." And so I was already married. I was a CPA in a Fortune 500 company, and I was over financial accounting when I got a job offer. I got a great job offer, VP finance for a Fortune 200 company. And then I got another job offer. And then I got a third job offer. And so here I am, 25 years old, and I'm getting the pick of jobs that I shouldn't be getting until I was in my 40s probably.
Yeah.
So Tessie went in one room to pray. I went in another room to pray, and I was hearing nothing. And so I did something that nobody should ever do. I just opened my Bible and put my finger on a verse. I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible. I do not recommend this, And but I sought for a man to stand in the gap.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's not it. Turned the page, and woe is me if I preach not the gospel, And it's one verse after another.
Right,
and I just was so shook up. And I came out of the room, and Tessie came out of her room, and I said, "What did he tell you?" And she said, "You go first." And I said, I think I'm supposed to preach. And she said, "That's what the Lord told me." And so I met with my dad-in-law, who was the pastor of the church, because he had started a church outside of Houston. And come to find out, the principal of the Christian school had the night before resigned. And he said, "You're about to be the principal of Christian school." And so I cut my pay by 5 and entered into the starvation of ministry and wouldn't trade a thing for it. It's been a joyous, joyous deal.
So for those that are listening, so many are, we're privileged to pastor a church of people who have bought into vision, who are part of a culture of service. And one of my greatest fears as a leader is to have people who serve out of obligation rather than from a place of gratitude and ultimately passion. And how would you say you have kept that passion alive, that connection to, I get to do this. Because I know all of us, and I'm sure you as well, there are days that we're weary and it feels like I have to do this. But to be able to rekindle that, what are some of the things that you have in your life to help you keep that fresh?
Oh, that's great. Colleen McCullough wrote a book called Indecent Obsession. And the indecent obsession is duty.
Mm,
And everything we do for the Lord, we have to move beyond duty to delight
yeah.
and delight ourselves in the Lord. If it's not fun, I don't do it. Now, this is sort of my little mantra.
Well, here we go.
It's I either find a way to make it fun, or I realize I'm not gifted to do that. Because of my schedule, because of what I do and the buckets that I carry.
Mhm.
I have to make sure that I am moving in the river of grace, the grace that equips me. If I start sensing fatigue, a weariness in what I'm doing, if I sense a drudgery, or I'm doing it out of obligation because I have to do it, chances are I'm up a dry creek. I've left the river of grace. And I've got to find out how I paddled so successfully up a dry creek and get back to that river of grace. The big temptation for me is I see something that needs to be done. And I operate on that 10 single syllable phrase, if it is to be, it is up to me. And I just barrel into it. And usually the Lord reveals things that need to be done, but he's only doing that for me not to do it myself, but to start being sensitive to train up people to address that need.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the big things for me is to make sure I stay in that river of grace. And if it ceases to be fun, and I don't know how I define fun,
Right.
I'm just energized by it. If I am in the area of my giftings and where God wants me to be, I find the energy. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm astray, even 1 degree off, or if I've stumbled into something that is really none of my business, then the drudgery hits me. So I pray daily and often during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Lord, is this where the grace is? And if the grace, the sufficient grace is there, I can do it. If it's not, I don't care how much organization, how much willpower, how much strength, perspiration, it's not going to happen. It's going to be in the flesh and not the spirit. So that's my big thing. The other thing is, and I've learned this over time, everybody's different. Everyone's schedule is different. I know when I'm at my peak is when everyone else is asleep. And that's where I hear from God. That's where I do those things that I believe are going to live long after me, through others. And that's where I map out the day. So usually in the wee hours of the morning, those are my best times. And by the time the sun's come up, then I'm moving into living out what the Lord has given me. What you receive in the darkness, speak openly in the light. And so I'm living it out. I'm giving it voice. If I have those early morning hours to get focused and get direction, that really helps me during the day to stay on top of things.
Yeah.
A great book, At Your Best. I don't know if you've ever read Carey Nieuwhof's book, At Your Best. Probably, he's got some great stuff, but this book is interesting, and his premise is simply this. You've got to figure out each day when you're at your best
Yeah.
and do the things that really matter when you're at your best.
Yeah.
and then find out, and he does the green, yellow, and red zones.
Yeah.
Green zones, you're at your best. Yellow, a good time to answer email. And
Or
red,
counsel.
or,
Never counsel in green or red.
never, yellow is good. And red, you better not be around people
Yeah.
if you're in a red zone. And that little dashboard
Yeah.
mentally has helped me and I just think, where am I at? Where am I? Because I know where they're at. They're in a red zone. Can I minister to them
Right.
where I am? Do I have the capacity? Those are some things that really help me.
So I really am thankful you brought up Newhoff's book. That I want to say it's maybe 3-4 years ago is when I got that book, and the principle is not revolutionary. I mean, it's kind of like a duh, right? But I can tell you that most leaders, myself included, feel like we're supposed to be able to operate at our peak no matter what zone we're in. And I've fallen prey to doing some stuff in the red zone that I've had to redo because I did it in the red zone. And so I would highly suggest that book for a lot of people. It is very, it will help you form a better plan of attack, so to speak, for
Very
your life.
good.
So you were talking about the river of grace, and really, to simplify this, because I'm a visual, very simple thinker. Really, what you're talking about, and really you're using prayer as this, which I love. If you look at a topographical map and you make a decision you're going to go somewhere, you pick out a landmark. And for many of us, that can be vision for our life, right? That's purpose, that's a goal. So you can melt that down into every day. But as you're moving toward whatever that is, you have to stop and take a bearing with a compass to make sure that you're still headed in that direction, because you may not always see that thing. And what you're talking about with those moments of prayer is that compass adjustment. And I think this is where a lot of people struggle, is they may talk to the Lord when they wake up in a hurry. They may talk to the Lord when they fall into bed exhausted. But we have run in chaotic circles all day, and we wonder why sometimes we're frustrated, unfulfilled, and never reaching the goal. It's exactly what you're talking about. And so I think it was Brother Tenney, and I know T.F. Tenney is somebody very special to you, him and his wife, Tess. But he made a statement. He said, there was a time that I prayed an hour every day. But at this point in my life, I never go an hour without prayer. Would you say that as you have navigated, that has become a reality in your life?
I think so. And I think prior generations, they emphasize that hour of prayer, and that is great. And I encourage that. The reality is, though, moment by moment, the more impactful a life that you live, like T.F. Tenney did, you cannot bank on that 1 hour. That fuel got you so far, but it's almost like you need moment by moment adjustments.
Right.
And that's what prayer to me is. It's adjusting us to face the realities of the moment. And that's where God nudges us. God aligns us with his will. And otherwise, we're moving through the day with misaligned priorities. And we're not we're not living out the not my will but thine be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I agree. I think it's a moment by moment thing. And I've been with Brother Tenney in moments that I'm thinking, what is the answer to this? and he said, the Lord just spoke to me. And you could tell the Lord had just spoken to him.
Yeah.
And so it's being in that constant frame of mind to hear from God.
So if you were to give my listeners top 5, top 3, these are things you should have in your life. These are so your bucket concept, right? You have 5 buckets. We talked about those. I love that concept, right? These are the things that I'm doing. But if and it might not be 5, it might not be 3, but if you were to give them some things that you need to really consider this for your life, if you want to be successful, whether it's your career, your walk with God, but ultimately living successfully, what would some of those be?
I would speak, first of all, to teens and young adults. And I would say form disciplines in the teens and young adult years. And those are the genuine spiritual disciplines of prayer, reading the Word of God, fasting, faithfulness in attendance, solitude, meditating, the traditional spiritual disciplines. I would say mid-teens to mid-20s, those need to be absolutely the focus. I would also say get as much and diverse education as you can in those years. I'm living proof it's harder as the years go by to circle back.
Right.
Spiritual disciplines, form the spiritual disciplines. I think a second huge deal is to answer those existential questions. Who am I? Why am I here?
Yeah, right.
What is my purpose in life? And get those secured. Those should not be answered when you're 40 years old, 50 years old. If you've never done it, then yes, address it.
Right, right.
But get a great sense of why God made you the way he did and grow comfortable in your own skin and destiny. It keeps you from trying to imitate others and mimicking others, getting jealous of others' success when that's not how God made you.
Right.
The third thing, and I really can't overemphasize this enough, is to surround yourself with people who are better than you and find friends that strengthen you. God makes this remarkable differentiation in personalities and likes and dislikes, but find the people that draw out your best strengths. And those may be people that you're not with every day.
Right.
Those may be people that come into your life. Like you mentioned, Brother Tenney. Brother Tenney came into my life. He's known me nearly all my life, but he came into my life in a forceful way about 25 years ago. And to the day he died, he never could explain or wouldn't share how it happened or why it happened. He became my second pastor and gave me insights that I needed for that phase of life that I was in. So I would find the people. I say it, the prophet said that God led the children of Israel by the hands of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, siblings. Moses was meek, and Aaron was the difference maker. He stood in the gap. And Miriam was the one that could vocalize, articulate, and cause people to move to action. You need this variety of people, a cohort in life to be successful. I would say that that's the third thing. And then the fourth, you've already alluded to that I feel very strongly about. If it's not fun, if life ceases to be fun, because in his presence, there's fullness of joy, and the joy of the Lord is our strength. And if we've lost the joy, then make sure you're doing in life what brings you the most joy, because God made you for that, and God will strengthen you in that. So it's a constant slight deviation in moving through life to stay focused on those areas where you have the strength and you have your joy.
So good. I think all of us would do well to have a moment of calibration, so to speak, and to ask ourselves those questions as we're going through the journey, because every one of us are prone to become distracted, or pursuing things that, while they're not bad, they're good things. They may not be the things that ultimately serve our purpose. And so, to make sure we're calibrated with that. And then I cannot say enough. When I feel the most weary, when people are draining, when I'm frustrated with people, usually it's usually never the people.
Yes.
It's I need a fresh encounter with God, right? And to go back to
Mm-hmm.
purpose. So so good. Um, one of the other areas, and really this is, I'm so appreciative of the connection that I have with you. Um, and I want us to maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about this. But uh, when the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, befell us, it did some things, and I say this carefully. Um, I'm actually thankful for the pandemic, because the pandemic exposed some things, certainly within my own life, but it caused there to be a resetting of the journey, so to speak, for me. And as a result of that, I was looking for some things and stumbled into um, a group of people who were looking at church revitalization. I was looking for some coaching as a pastor, and quite frankly, I remember one of my first conversations with Tom Rayner's group. They asked me why I was a part, and I said, well, quite frankly, I wanted to figure out what you were doing and see how I could adapt that into my local church. And but that began a process that ultimately somehow God brought us together, in that I knew you from a distance, and you began to build something called Healthy Churches. And when you look at the statistics, they're staggering. The decline of the local church, the closure of churches, really the departing from what we would call traditional faith. We're no longer really, we're not a Christian nation. We are becoming more and more a secular nation. And so you have done an incredible work with something called Healthy Churches, and really to revitalize church, to do some things there. I want you, if you don't mind, briefly talk about what is the passion, the vision, the burden behind what is Healthy Churches and how it drives you.
And I want to thank you, Pastor, for being a part of that group, because I think it's essential in the day and age we're living in. As you noted, we're seeing the closure of churches. It hit mainline organizations years ago. I remember I bought a book in 1972 called "Why Churches Die," and it was a commentary on the decline of churches in the United Methodist organization. which, of course, the Spirit-filled movement flowed directly through Methodism, Wesleyanism. And so it was curious. And I saw it as a harbinger, sort of a bellwether. I was so young, I didn't really know why I bought the book, didn't understand it, but it just hit me. Then over the years, I began to collect other books. So Rayner's book, The Autopsy of a Deceased Church, and How to Avoid It, or some little
It's such a
subtitle,
title, man. It's such a title.
But so what happened in the mainline churches? And by mainline, we would say United Methodist, United Church of Christ, Christian churches. They began to decline about 60 years ago. The number of churches began to decline, and a percentage of attendance in relation to population declined. This hit the evangelicals about 40 years ago. And then it started sweeping over into the Pentecostal charismatic realm, that we started seeing churches close. The present statistic, 100,000 churches will close in this decade. And now new ones will start, so they'll be offset. But we're seeing churches repurposed into cafes, repurposed into bars, and we see that in every major city in the United States. I grew intrigued with it, maybe because of my background, that growing up, I saw dysfunctional, unhealthy churches. And rather than just curse the darkness, I wanted to do something proactive about it. We are seeing, so the phenomena that's happening now, churches, 80% of churches are at the most positive thing you can say about 80% is they may be in maintenance mode, but usually maintenance mode means they're already on the decline.
Right.
It's estimated that only 4% of churches, evangelical Protestant churches, are actually growing. And of that 4%, many are not keeping up with the population in their area. So few churches are growing. Those that do grow, they grow by transfer growth and not by conversional discipleship growth, which is Book of Acts kind of stuff. And so this is what drew me into it. I did the Rayner material. I was exposed. I went the church, the organizational consulting route, got a degree in that. One of the revitalizers I met in that recommended the doctoral program that I did in revitalization, and got to meet a lot of other people that are writers and researchers in this field. And I'm thankful to say that in some sense, many of our churches are resisting this downward pull, yours being one of them, but many have been lulled to sleep. They're in the maintenance mode. And when it hits their radar screen, then they don't really know what to do. They fall back on the traditional, well, let's have a revival.
Right.
Let's bring in a special speaker. And it's not the chief qualities that will change the culture of a church, where it becomes life-giving and life-breathing and death-defying.
Right.
It's superficial. And so healthy churches tries to get down to the root of the issues that keep a church from growing and starts there. Practically, it's knowing your community, knowing the area, because one of the chief reasons a church declines and dies is that it ceases to look like its community.
Right.
Maybe there's been urban flight and the church people live 30 miles away from the church. In the surrounding community, there's no halo effect in that area from the local church. They're not reaching the community. So one of the things is just know your community and know, how can I minister to that community?
Yeah. So there are a number of things within this, and I'll just say I am so privileged to be a part of this, because my desire for coaching, when I started this journey, really has been satisfied, so to speak, as a result of this relationship with Healthy Churches. And I've been privileged to have a part in watching things happen in churches. But to your point, where when people start feeling that downward turn, wanting to have a revival, wanting to have whatever the case might be, that a Sunday school outreach, etc. It really does feel like we've found that the fire has become embers, and so we're looking for gas to pour on it without realizing that it's short-lived, right? Yeah, it will have some, but it has no lasting turn. The fire doesn't remain. And so, to your point, of churches having lost the representation of their community, it is incredibly insightful, and we see that through a lot of these churches that we've connected to. The other aspect of this is the knowing your church aspect, right? Because you've been around long enough, and I'm willing to take the shot for this. But you'll have people who are incredibly resistant to change, because this is the way we've always done it. This is how the church was built. This is how it was founded. You're departing from that. You don't respect it. You'll never, right? But they don't want to change. But what they've done no longer, the message is good, but the method don't work. And so I think this, again, is the part that needs this mind adjustment. What would you say to that, knowing your local church, but as a member? So really, these are the people that attach to this podcast, are people who are helping, the church I pastor, the thing that has made us healthy, that has revitalized who we are. It's the people being willing to change, seeing that vision. What would you speak to those people to say, we have to see this, and we have to be willing to change? How do you make that? How do you own that? How do you get excited about that?
Oh, that's great. Those are some great questions.
We got 40 more minutes.
I say church revitalization begins with leader revitalization.
Yeah.
It begins with the leaders of the local church, whether they hold a title, whether they're influencers, that church can only be revitalized when individuals are revitalized.
That's good.
And we open our eyes again to the harvest and see the potential. One of the curious stories, because what happens over time, a movement becomes a monument. You can't help it. It's going to be, once it becomes multi-generational, you're going to start looking back to those sepia-tone photographs, and you're going to start reliving a heritage. And a heritage is a great thing until you're constantly looking in your rearview mirror. I mean, there's a reason the windshield's bigger than the rearview mirror. But that's what happens, and you can't help it. It's just what happens. People become very sentimental about things and that matter to them as children, and you see it in every sphere. You see it in the worship. You see it in the service structure. You see it in the ministries and the programs of the church. Well, it worked when I was a kid, but we've always done it this way. It's pretty much the kiss of death in a local church. What worked yesterday, outside of the Acts 2:42, 47 things, prayer, continuing in the word, fellowship, doctrine, outside of those key ingredients of an apostolic church, if we did it yesterday one way, there's a good likelihood it will not. I mean, what we're doing right now, podcasts.
Right.
We used to do flannel graphs. I mean, but to be able to do a podcast and reach more people, I think it stirred me so much, one of the stories that I experienced, because it was a church just down the street from the church where I was raised. And it was a church my pastor always wanted to buy. If he could have bought this church, he would have been a happy camper. It was the greatest outreach church in our area. It was, they had great programs. The campus was amazing. And I was visiting an elder in the hospital whose sister attended that church. And she was there, and I prayed with her brother. And she looked at me and she said, "Pastor, I want to know something. I want to know, do you have a bunch of screaming kids in your church, running up and down the aisles, hanging from the chandeliers, yelling?" And I was just braced for it, because these are very plain-spoken people, and I knew I was about to get hit. And I said, "Ma'am, we do. We have a lot of children." She said, "Do you have a lot of babies crying? Mothers won't take them to the nursery, and they stay in the building and they just cry." I said, "Yes, we have some of that too." And then her reaction, I just didn't anticipate. She broke down in tears and started crying. She said, "I'd give anything to hear a baby cry in church again." She said, "I haven't heard a baby cry in 30 years. And so I started quizzing, and I found out that church that had run thousands was down to 40 people in attendance, and they all sat on the front 2 rows in a near empty auditorium, and they were just trying to keep the lights on. And I asked her what happened. She said, "All of my friends either died or moved away, and we don't know anybody in our area." So I think in reaching church people that need to realize they've got to pass this down to the next generation, telling stories like that, true stories, and we all have them, of watching churches age out. It's called the triple elder effect. Older senior pastors, older people in the congregation, in older buildings. That triple elder combination is what we're seeing throughout North America right now.
Right.
And it's probably leading to decline so quickly. And those are the critical areas. So when elders open up their hearts and say, "We want the next generation here," whatever we have to do, we're not going to change our message. We're not going to change what we believe and teach. We know that's forever settled in heaven. But what can we change to make this a next generation friendly church?
Yeah. And I think I'm thankful, I should say. I'm thankful that that's what we have at the church I pastor. I'm thankful my church trustee board. I have one man on my board that has served in that capacity since the founding pastor through the preceding pastor, and now is still on that board today for me, and is a man who is willing to advocate and champion change.
That's great.
And I'm blessed because of that. Like you said, we hold dear the doctrine, the fundamentals of who we are, but realizing there are things and they're paradigms, right? I laugh about this. I remember as a kid, you didn't walk into church with a ball cap on.
Right.
And my son's on the other side of the camera, and he'll wear a ball cap all the time. And I have to ask him just to do me a solid and not do it on a Sunday morning. But it's things like that that represent the greater paradigms that need to be
Yes.
changed within. And when we're willing to do that, you talk about the crying babies. There'll be some people who watch or listen to this podcast and they'll be chuckling because we have that. And we have conversations like, do they not realize how disruptive that is? But I will say, that I would rather have a little wildfire than no fire.
Yes.
And that's what that is. Those are growing pains, right? Those are good things. So if you were to say to anyone listening, how can they be a change agent to facilitate? For instance, for us, we have implemented change. We are becoming more and more healthy all the time. But how do you keep that the priority? How do you as an individual be a catalyst for that to continue to move? What would you say? Is there anything?
I think the blessing of someone perhaps who's been around the church for years that realizes our church has got to go into a new dimension, a new level, expanding, reaching a new generation. Any individual that sees that, first of all, my cap is off to them, okay? Anyone that sees that, just recognizing
Right.
that is half the battle. Second thing is I think be deliberate in identifying those things that are not law and gospel,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that can change, like the ball cap, or whether you do have to put someone through 3 years of discipleship before they can pour some punch in kids'
dear
church.
Lord, that's another
And
40-minute conversation.
In other words, figure out what is preference
Correct.
versus what is essential.
Correct.
And start divesting the two. So an influencer can be a person who sees it, recognizes this is essential, but this is purely preference driven, and then becomes a peacemaker and an intercessor between factions. For example, my son-in-law pastors the church. If it was up to him, it would be bluegrass. Every song we would sing would be bluegrass. Okay. If it's up to me,
Not happening.
It would pretty much be Gregorian chants. I mean, but neither of us
That ain't happening either.
neither of us get our wishes.
Right.
And because when we drill down into our community, I pastor in a very young area. The average homeowner is 29 years of age. And so the average person in the community is 26. Well, we just said, what's our average age in our church? Well, we did it and found out it was 39. And we thought, we're not looking like our community.
Mm-hmm.
So it became the catalyst to open up, to get more kids programs, more youth programs, more young couples-driven programs.
Mm-hmm.
And what we saw over 5 years is we saw the age plummet down to 29, 28, 27, and now it's down to 26. Having that group in the church adds so much life and so much joy. One of my greatest greeters, Alice Brown, she's 94. And she wears her high heels out, and she's a greeter, and she's 100,000 watt smile. But what she has done is she makes friends with every generation. They all have Alice's phone number. And she has trained. She will, if somebody walks in, she just likes their smile. She'd say, you'd make a great greeter. Why don't you just stand by me today and greet? She doesn't know them. And I would say this generation befriending and championing the next generation is a huge difference maker in bringing health to a church.
I love that. I love that. The old visual of the temple being filled with smoke and the pillars of the house shaking. I talk about if the pillars, who really are represented by Alice, those elders, they have made the investments, they've endured a lot of things. If they're not engaged in the current process, the house won't be filled with the smoke, which is that change agent, which is the presence of God,
Amen.
right? And I'm so thankful, as I stated at the beginning, to have those types of people. I appreciate you recognizing them in this moment, because there are times, and I have heard this, our days past. We did our part. It's time for us to get out of the way. And to that I say, no, we need you more now than we ever did. It's a different capacity, right? So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the conversation. I don't know how often we'll get to do this, but I want to say to you, for our viewers, truly, I appreciate you. And you are you're a champion of the church. You know the history of the church, but you are truly a champion of another generation. And so I thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to all your viewers, listeners, and everything everyone is doing to expand this kingdom.
Amen. Thank you for joining with us on this podcast. I'm so thankful for the opportunities we get to share together. And I want to remind you, there is nothing greater than the pursuit of God and really His purpose for your life. Don't ever stop pursuing. Remember, He's got a plan for you. You are loved, valued, and cherished. Do not ever forget that. So until next time, we look forward to joining with you again right here on The Pursuit.